북한 주민들은 지금 이 순간에도 당국의 혹독한 감시와 처벌 속에 기본적인 인권조차 유린당하고 있습니다. 북한 인권을 개선하는 근본적인 힘은 바로 진실입니다. 북한 인권의 개선 없이 민주, 평화, 통일의 길은 요원합니다. 우리가 지향하는 민주, 평화, 통일이라는 것은 남북한 모든 구성원이 자유를 누리며 함께 번영하는 통일입니다. 자유와 인권과 법치에 기반한 민주, 평화, 통일이야말로 우리 한반도만을 위한 것이 아니라 전 세계의 평화와 번영에 기여할 것이기 때문입니다.
Aloha. I stand before you as the chairperson of the Global Strategy Special Committee of the Peaceful Unification Advisory Council, and I warmly welcome each and every one of you to the North Korean Human Rights Hawaii Conference 2023. I would like to extend a special welcome to those who flew in from South Korea to this conference. I'm also grateful to the East-West Center and President Suzanne Barres Lam, Consul General Lee So-young, and Mr. Park Bong-young, President of the Hawaii Chapter of the Peaceful Unification Advisory Council, for co-hosting this important event. I would also like to express my gratitude to our keynote speakers, Ambassador Julie Turner, Ambassador Lee Shin-hwa, former Ambassador Dean Maurice Down, and Dr. Grant Newsham, and our Director Ralph Kosa, moderators Stephen Norpor and Greg Scalatois. I also want to thank Representation Kong and Senator Mercado Kim of Hawaii State Legislature for issuing the certificate recognizing and commending this conference. All of this would not be possible without the hard work and effort across by all team members and staff. I thank you sincerely. We hold these esteemed individuals in the highest regard and eagerly anticipate their insightful keynote speeches. It is truly meaningful to have the opportunity for them to share their views and extensive experience with all of us who have a deep interest in North Korean human rights. This year, in light of the ongoing provocations of Kim Jong-un's regime and the deplorable human rights situation in North Korea, we commemorate several important anniversaries. First, we mark the 10th-year anniversary of the establishment of the United Nations Commission of Inquiry, which brought to the world's attention the gross human rights violation taking place inside North Korea. Additionally, next Sunday will mark the 75th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, highlighting the fact that the people of North Korea do not enjoy a single right as enshrined in the Declaration. At today's conference, we have also provided an opportunity for a special guest from South Korea, E.G. Young, to share with us their first-hand experience related to North Korean human rights violations. We gather here today to listen to our distinguished speakers and panelists, and through their remarks and in-depth panel discussions, we aim to highlight the still appalling conditions in North Korea and call upon the international community, including the United Nations, to take action. Furthermore, in order to improve the human rights situation in North Korea, We must start and take action in Hawaii, which plays a crucial role in the overall Indo-Pacific security. We must also continue to voice our criticism against the Chinese government's brutal policy of forcibly repatriating North Korean refugees. Finally, we must unite and collectively speak out and be a voice for the voiceless in North Korea and North Korean defector community. As we do so, let us remember the words from the Bible. Isaiah chapter 1, verse 17. Learn to do right, seek justice, defend the oppressed. Once again, I would like to express my gratitude to everyone present here today, including our special speakers and guests, for your valuable presence this afternoon. Thank you so much, and mahalo.
Good afternoon, Council General Lee and Chairman Amy Chen and Park and Dr. Ralph Kosa and ladies and gentlemen. This is Shinhwa Lee. I am an ambassador of International Cooperation on North Korean Human Rights in the Republic of Korea. As the South Korean ambassador for this issue, I'm deeply honored and pleased to be a part of this first ever conference held in Hawaii. The most pressing and critical challenges posed by North Korea are its nuclear threat and human rights issues. These issues are intimately linked to the regime's primary and ultimate objective, that is, the continuity of the Kim dynastic rule. For this, North Korean regime employs two major approaches. First, externally enhancing its nuclear and missile capability, aiming for arms reduction talks with the US rather than pursuing denuclearization. Yet the previous South Korean administration and the Trump administration in the United States only focused on the denuclearization negotiation and the summit meetings with Kim Jong-un at the expense of addressing human rights issues. That policy approach was not only the complete failure, but also emboldened and only spoiled North Korean regime. Additionally, the intensifying tension and competition between the US and China and Russia have seemingly granted North Korean political impunity for its nuclear and military adventurism. In this context, it is imperative to strengthen deterrence measures and convey strong messages to Kim Jong-un throughout the US-South Korean alliance, especially North Korea's nuclear capability and intimidation pose a direct threat and danger to the Korean Peninsula. Second strategy of North Korea for regime security is its internal approach for very strong information control and employing a politics of fear, using severe penalties to suppress any oppressions from the within. This year marks significant anniversaries: the 75th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of the Human Rights, 30th anniversary of the Vienna Conference on Human Rights, 20th anniversary of the adoption of the European Union-led UN resolution on human rights of North Korea, and the 10th anniversary of the establishment of the Commission of Inquiry on North Korean Human Rights. All those human rights abuses of North Korea is so many things, but to name a few, the denial of basic needs such as food and information, the suppression of freedom of expression and movement, and political prison camp, and even public execution. Raising a collective international voice to hold North Korean leaders, including Kim Jong-un, accountable without impunity is crucial. However, defensive stance of China and Russia, which extend to both nuclear and human rights issues are problematic, complicating international efforts to address North Korean questions. Listing North Korean human rights and sharing the stories of those who suffer can be an endless task. Due to time constraint, I will briefly mention just 3 key points. First, there is a need to, quote-unquote, internationalize the issue. Despite criticism that North Korea itself is virtually a large prison, this problem discussed for nearly 30 years since the 1990s has often been sidelined due to excessive focus on its nuclear and military threats. It's treated as secondary issue or switch it on and off issue as needed. Furthermore, the lack of progress over a long period has led to a sense of fatigue in the international community. Additionally, with conflicts and humanitarian crises occurring around the world, North Korean crises have become a forgotten crisis in the global media. To revitalizing North Korea human rights issue, it should be addressed as a critically important problem with a global context rather than focusing solely on North Korea. Let me give one example where international cooperation is desperately needed. Around 620 people out of 2,000 North Korean escapees in the North Korea and China border area were first repatriated just 1 day after Asia Game was over in early October. Most of these individuals are women who, upon repatriation, likely faced body searches, sexual exploitation, torture, and potential lifelong political imprisonment. The trauma is particularly severe for those women with children in China, as repatriation means a painful and unbearable separation for both the North Korean escapee mother and their children who are Chinese nationals. The action of China are a clear violation of international humanitarian conventions, such as UN Convention Against Torture, laws against forced family separation, and refugee law, to which China is also signatory. More than 1,000 escapees are still believed to be in Chinese detention, with NGOs reporting the risk of further repatriation. Currently, U.S. Special Envoy Julie Turner and myself are preparing a joint statement that includes the prohibition of punishment by the North Korean regime against these individuals and the prevention of further forced repatriation by China. We hope to announce this soon with like-minded countries. Secondly, as a scholar and as an ambassador myself, I have consistently argued that North Korea's military threat and human rights violations are dual threat, representing two sides of the one coin. North Korea's nuclear development and missile threat, including ICBMs, inherently require financing and labor, which are directly linked to human rights abuses in the country. It is estimated that North Korea's 2.5 million population require a minimum of 5.5 million tons of food annually, with a shortfall of around 800,000 tons each year. In contrast, the Kim Jong-un conducted 71 missile launches in 2022 alone, and the cost of these launches, even by conservative estimates, could have purchased 1 million tons of food that cover all the deficit with even surplus. The case of North Korean overseas worker is around 100,000 around the 40 countries, is a prime example of fulfilling both financing and labor for Kim Jong-un's military purposes. Their income is a critical revenue source for the regime, second only to cyber hacking. These workers, functioning as so-called cash cows, endure extremely poor living conditions akin to modern slavery, working 15 to 18 hours daily, and then 80 or 90% of their earning just directly go to their own regime. I'm sure the money is used to satisfy luxury needs of Kim Jong-un and his family and a selective group of elites, as well as for military buildup. There is another crucial issue I wish to highlight. Since the first nuclear test in 2006, there have been significant concern about radiation exposure, particularly near Yongbyon and Punggye-ri nuclear facilities. Cost-cutting measures likely resulted in inadequate protection for those working in these areas, including scientists, officials, military personnel, and cleaners, putting them at risk of radiation exposure. Residents near the Punggye-ri site and political prisoners forced into labor during the nuclear test are also at risk, potentially constituting a major humanitarian crisis. Third, to effectively address North Korean human rights issues, we need fresh and innovative approaches accompanied by feasible action plans. Effective data collection and research on North Korean human rights from both global and regional perspectives and in connection with the regime's military adventurism are crucial. This is challenging because of North Korea's isolation and its black box nature. Utilizing defector interviews, satellite imagery, and collaboration with defector organizations can provide valuable insight for evidence-based policy and strategic development. Separating or prioritizing human rights nuclear issue will not effectively resolve either. Both should be simultaneously and comprehensively addressed as threat to peace and as crime against humanity. However, we had a game changer that was a COI report in 2014, but unfortunately, we lost the momentum in 2018 as denuclearization talks between Trump and Kim Jong-un and the South Korean government reconciliation policy with the North silenced the problem of human rights, as I mentioned earlier. So now is the time for us to revitalizing this attention altogether. Implementing targeted sanctions modeled after the Magnitsky Act can strategically address these abuses and corruption. South Korea's implementation and regular updating of an independent sanction list against North Korea are critical steps forward. Such measures would not only hold North Korean leaders accountable for human rights violation and nuclear threats, but also signal a robust and unified international stance against such crimes. In this process, empowering and encountering the youth, who are our hope and future, should be a very important and concrete step to approach North Korean human rights. It is crucial to listen to the fresh and diverse ideas and approaches of younger South Korean and younger members of international society and NGOs, and younger defectors and children of defectors who are working on North Korean human rights. We also must remember the young people within North Korea. They are not just victims of human rights abuses perpetrated by Kim Jong-un government, Kim Jong-un regime, but are key agents of change, striving to transform North Korea and devise their own future. It is the responsibility of us, both South Koreans and members of the international community, to protect and empower them. I think it is our responsibility together. In closing, it is with my great pleasure and gratitude that I participate in this international conference on important issue, which is North Korean human rights, here in Honolulu, a historically significant place where the first official Korean immigration began 120 years ago on January 13th, 1903. I am aware of the important efforts made by 2 North Korean escapees a few years ago here to launch a farm project on Big Island, Hawaii, aimed at assisting their fellow escapees settling and adapting to new lives. Tragically, their untimely death in a car accident led to a decline in such effort. However, I firmly believe that the spirit of their efforts must not be forgotten and be continued. It is my sincere hope that this conference will serve as a catalyst, reigniting the drive and commitment to establish a space here, a place of deep historical significance for all Koreans. Hopefully, we can make a space for North Korean escapees who desperately need freedom, dignity, and human rights. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you to Mr. Kong for the kind introduction. I'd also like to extend my thanks to the Peaceful Unification Advisory Council Global Strategy Committee Chairperson, Annie Chan, the PUAC Hawaii Chapter, One Korea Network Director, Henry Song, the East-West Center, and the Consul General of the Republic of Korea, Lee Se-young. It's an honor to be among such a distinguished group of speakers and guests today. It's also amazing to look out over this huge crowd from up here. It's actually a little bit intimidating, but I'm excited to see such a large gathering of people who share the common goal of promoting respect for human rights and the dignity of the North Korean people. It's also encouraging to see so many young people in the audience today and the diversity in the crowd. So thank you to everyone for coming. We're gathered in this room 6 days before International Human Rights Day, when people around the world will celebrate the 75th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, a document that is both literally and figuratively the cornerstone of the United Nations. When the original cornerstone of the physical United Nations building was laid by the very first Secretary General, the cornerstone contained a copy of the UDHR. While we're celebrating fundamental freedoms and universal rights, we must take time to reflect upon the human rights situation in the DPRK, one of the most protracted human rights crises in the world. As you've heard, 2024 will mark the 10th anniversary since the release of the groundbreaking report by the UN Commission of Inquiry on the Human Rights Situation in the DPRK. It also marks 20 years since the creation of the mandate of the UN Special Rapporteur on North Korean human rights, and 20 years since the very position that I am currently holding was created when the US passed its North Korea Human Rights Act. The freedoms that we in the US and our close allies in the ROK hold so dear still seem like a distant goal for the people of North Korea. The COVID-19 pandemic allowed the DPRK to tighten controls in what was already one of the most repressive environments in the world. 3 new laws were passed increasing penalties for seemingly benign activities, such as watching K-dramas or using South Korean slang. Restrictions on movement were tightened, closing many avenues used to seek relief from hunger and abuse. And while the government focuses its resources on developing its weapons program, the people continue to suffer from food insecurity and are exploited through mass mobilizations and enforced labor camps. For those of us sitting here today in this room, I hope this conference will be a call to action, to be a voice for the voiceless, to make clear to the people of North Korea that we see their suffering, and to demand that Kim Jong-un and the DPRK government uphold its international obligations and take concrete steps to improve respect for human rights in North Korea. Governments are meant to serve the people, not to exploit them. In my role as Special Envoy on North Korean human rights issues, I will focus on advancing 5 priority lines of effort. First, the United States will continue to work in close partnership with our allies, particularly the Republic of Korea, to continue to shine the spotlight on the egregious human rights violations and abuses committed by the DPRK government. This includes by lifting up the voices of North Korean refugees, escapees, and defectors, and supporting efforts to promote the free flow of information into, out of, and within North Korea. Second, the United States will continue to promote accountability for those responsible for the DPRK's human rights violations and abuses. This effort will require close cooperation among all aspects of the international community, including survivors of North Korea's human rights abuses, international organizations, civil society, and governments. Our third line of effort focuses on pressing the DPRK for concrete change, including through the repeal of the anti-reactionary thought law and urging the DPRK government to implement the recommendations it has accepted through the UN's Universal Periodic Review process. As we head into the DPRK's next review cycle, the international community stands ready to support the DPRK in implementing those recommendations that can positively impact marginalized communities, including persons with disabilities, women, and children. A fourth priority is supporting the North Korean refugee community, particularly by calling on the PRC and all UN member states to respect the principle of non-refoulement. The DPRK's systematic human rights abuses, particularly its harsh punishment of individuals forcibly returned to the DPRK, is well documented in UN reports, including the Commission of Inquiry report, and through thousands of refugee testimonies. Beyond halting the forced repatriation of North Korean asylum seekers, this line of effort also includes strengthening support for North Korean refugees and asylees around the world. They are a testament to what is possible for North Koreans to achieve in a free and open society. It's particularly symbolic that we're gathered here in Hawaii, where the first wave of Korean immigrants arrived in America 120 years ago. Korean Americans in particular can play an important role in helping to share their experiences in integrating into US culture and society and support this new wave of refugees. Our fifth line of effort is increasingly urgent. We're focused on seeking a humanitarian solution to allow for divided family members in the United States to reunite with their loved ones. Having met with many of those individuals in the last few weeks, I can see the longing that they hold in their hearts to reconnect with and to find answers regarding the whereabouts of their loved ones. In addition to those separated during the war, there are also POW, abductee, and detainee families seeking answers and reunification with their loved ones as well. These are sons separated from their mothers, sisters separated from their brothers, and siblings who have never met but only know each other by name. Some of these individuals suffer in private, too afraid of the emotions that come with muttering the names of their loved ones. I'm encouraged as I look out over this huge audience to see so many young people here today and hope that the next generation will continue to carry these stories in your hearts and to remember the very real human impact that the DPRK's controls have. These family separations continue to occur even today, as North Koreans seeking freedom often must leave in waves, parents going ahead of their children, husbands traveling ahead of their wives, or siblings who are separated by human trafficking networks or forced repatriations. With no legal means to communicate, those who go ahead are left with the uncertainty of the safety of those that they left behind. Well, those left behind often wonder if they've been abandoned or forgotten. The regime's human rights abuses, including enforced disappearances, arbitrary detention, and transnational repression, continue to keep these families separated. As we work together, I urge us to remember that North Korean human rights are not a zero-sum game. We can and must multitask because DPRK human rights abuses are inextricably linked to international peace and security. Pursuing our human rights goals and our security goals are mutually supportive, as are our human rights and humanitarian goals. At the end of the day, this is about supporting the welfare and the dignity of the North Korean people. As we celebrate 70 years of the US ROK Alliance, I'm proud to be here alongside Ambassador Lee Shin-hwa, looking out into an audience that reflects the closeness and the strength of our ties. And if I may, I'm gonna steal a phrase from my Department of Defense colleagues as I close my remarks today. It's important that we work together to tackle the challenge of North Korean human rights, the US, the ROK, civil society, and the whole of the international community. So I will close my remarks by saying, as we work to promote human rights for the North Korean people, 같이 갑시다. 감사합니다.
Good to see you all. We are honored to have Chairperson Annie Kim, who has really sponsored and put together this conference, together in partnership with the East-West Center. President Ferris Lum is here, and the General Counsel, Lee, of the Republic of Korea. It is great to share the stage with my fellow ambassadors, Turner and Lee. And I also want to especially note the executive directors, Kang, Scarletou, who are here with us today. I'm going to start by talking a bit about the security crisis of North Korea, transition into the North Korean human rights issue, and reserve potential solutions and approaches for the later conversation that we will be having. North Korea has the fourth largest number of military units of any country in the world after the US, China, and Russia. Now, it's not the most high-tech weapons. They have old MiG planes and old tanks and some old weaponry. So when I met with the South Korean ambassador to the US, he did not seem that concerned about the mass of military armaments that North Korea has collected over the years. In fact, if North Korea did a major military provocation, he said he would actually see it as an opportunity for South Korea, an opportunity to reunify the peninsula. This is the first time I've heard this from a South Korean official. South Korea, in turn, has increased its military preparedness, and the South Korean ambassador sounded rather confident in the preparedness of South Korea. While there is much focus on the security crisis related to North Korea, the 70-something missile launches, the satellite, and the many provocations that North Korea has engaged in, it is important, underlying that, to understand the overarching goals of North Korea and the underlying approach of North Korea. North Korea has three primary goals. One, to promote positive sentiment in South Korea towards North Korea. Those of you who are not familiar with Korea might be surprised to hear that many in the younger and middle-aged generations have been effectively reached with this propaganda. Number two, they want to get the US uncommitted to defend South Korea and to divide the South Korea and US alliance. Number three, and this has been the long-standing one, and it is what they attempted during the Korean War, is to take over the peninsula by force. And how do they approach things? They use a five-fold pattern where they precipitate a crisis, get to the negotiation table who they want, negotiate benefits, swallow those benefits, break the agreement, rinse and recycle. It is very important for countries dealing with the DPRK to interrupt and not allow this sort of pattern to persist. That pattern must be disrupted. And I don't say this in general in terms of diplomacy, but there's a need for coercive diplomacy in regards to North Korea because they operate on the basis of force and they don't understand things other than force, which is why Kim Jong-un despised the weakness of President Moon and he respected the strength of President Trump in the last administration. Let me pivot at this point, though, to justice and human rights issues. Without justice, there cannot be a deep and lasting peace on the peninsula. Chairperson Annie Chan correctly noted that North Korea does not uphold a single right in the UN Declaration of Human Rights. For that matter, they don't uphold a single right in their own constitutions, which are not worth the paper that they are printed on, because they do not follow them. Therefore, I coined a new term to describe this state in North Korea. I coined the term rightlessness, because it is a country where no right of the people is upheld and protected by its own government. It is a state of rightlessness. What sort of rights are violated? One of the most profound expressions of this rightlessness are the concentration camps in North Korea, which are often hidden between mountains and in out-of-the-way sorts of places. When satellite imagery is used to confront the North Korean government, they claim these are merely farming villages. They are not. They are concentration camps. Think Hitler, think Mao, think the gulags of Stalin. These are the sorts of concentration camps that we are talking about, and worse than those, because Kim Il-sung instituted the policy of 3 generations of anti-revolutionaries must suffer in these camps. And so you can be born in a total control zone concentration camp in North Korea for no other reason than one of your grandparents was deemed anti-communist revolution. But the whole country is a slave state, one jail of a country. Another way to describe North Korea is a criminal cult. They are committing all manners of human rights violations and injustices against their own people, against those in other countries at times. And this is something that should not be allowed to continue. When future generations look back on ours and say, what did you do about the most unjust situation on planet Earth, what is going on in North Korea? I do not say that lightly. I'm aware of many situations of mass atrocity crimes around the world. I place the North Korean injustices and the human rights violation #1 in the world. The crimes against humanity, the war crimes, there's never been a peace treaty signed. The genocide that is going on in North Korea must stop. And we have a chance here at this conference to address and consider how to address these North Korean human rights violations. I just came from South Korea, where I met with Minister Kim, the Minister of Unification, and there was also the SAGES group, which is made up of the members of the Commission of Inquiry, all 3 of them, as well as some other leaders in South Korea. And there are some proposals that I put forward on that trip that I'd like to put forward in the upcoming talk that is coming up soon, later in this conference. But this is something where we should not turn a blind eye. We should care, and we should act to address the worst human rights situation, the worst injustices going on our planet. Thank you. Mahalo.